And we're live.
Hello and welcome to another live demonstration. This will be a one session demonstration, and as we have in the past few weeks, we've got a live studio audience. So say hi everyone. Hi. So this is a shorter one than we have done. We've done them in 3 and 2 sessions, but this will only be a one session. So what am I doing this time? I'm going to be using the Inktense products. So it will be pencils, there we go, some blocks and the pans. So they brought out a set 1 and now they've brought out a set 2. I have only got the pans for set 2. I didn't get the set because I already had an empty tin which I've managed to put them in and they fit nicely. So I just got the pans on this, but both sets come like this and there's now 24 colours, which is great, all with that lovely Inktense features. So what are Inktense? Inktense are really wonderfully pigmented colours which dry permanent. So unlike a watercolour, once they're dried you can't reactivate, and the key thing to activating this is water. So plenty of water ensures that it activates the paint to dry permanent. So sometimes it may lift colour off on top, but that's because there's not been a lot of water added. You can use it on fabric, and I think I've done one on a canvas bag before. Paper, there's lots of different surfaces you can use because of the quality of this paint. It is a paint, but it's an ink as well because it dries permanent, but pigmented, so good light fast qualities. I've done a colour swatch for the new colours. So set 1 of the pans, which were for the Derwent Inktense range, are really nice and innovative. Yes, I said it. A new range. And they've been very popular. So set 1, some nice colours, and set 2, again, nice additional colours to the range. So a whole set of 24. You don't need all 24. You can choose which ones you want and put them in maybe your own tin like I've done. Okay, so I'm going to do these beach huts. Now we had a discussion about where they were from because this is my own image, and we were naming every seaside town that probably has beach huts. I think we've settled on, this is me and Gary when I say we, Whitby, and I'm sure that they are from Whitby. And I just love the colours and the light, and you'll see here the lovely shadow is sharp. The light must be coming from here and dropping on to create these lovely sharp shadows. Now one tip is I've got a ruler, and we talk about vanishing points, so where all your lines go to and come from. And I'm only going to be showing you one vanishing point because one painting can have many. But what I was struggling with was the boards, and they all follow the same line. So a good tip is using this ruler. I think I've got it in about the right place, but you can check. And you'll see how the lines follow the ruler as I go down all the way here. And they're the same as you go along. They may not be in quite the same place, but they all follow that vanishing point to about here, all the way down to here. And you can see everything goes round. And the reason I've used that ruler is because it's actually difficult to do it by eye naturally. And you can see there that all those boards follow that same direction. And it's really interesting when you do this to see the angles that you get. So I've drawn it out because I've only got 45 minutes and I won't have time to do everything. I've got a little dot here, and I've worked out that this helps me put the boards on. And I'm not overly worried, but I do think, especially with a structured shape, you do need to get things fairly right. I don't matter if my lines are slightly wobbly, but they need to be in the right perspective. Okay, so I'll probably be using that ruler at some time. So, Inktense. Now, why would you want your paint to dry permanent? Now, you can work with them very similar to you would do a watercolour. I'm using them with a brush. This is a sable synthetic, imitation sable, sorry. New to the SAA range. Works like the sable, holds that water, but has that synthetic quality, keeps the tip. So, like I say, it's my new best friend. And I want it to hold plenty of water. I have a swatch card. To be honest, Gary cut the end of my paper because it wasn't in the middle. So he's cut this bit off the end of my quarter imperial paper because I didn't put it in the middle. And he likes things nice and neat. So I'm not going to waste it. It doesn't bother me. I'm going to use it to make sure when I put the colour on, it's the right consistency. Because these colours are very strong, I have to make sure I put plenty of water because I don't want it too bright. They dry permanent, which is really great because it means you can do lots of glazing, lots of layering without it going muddy because you're not disturbing the underlayers. Right, I don't need red, I want blue. What I do is I get lost with which colour comes next. So what I'm going to do is put the colours on straight away, just so I know which ones are blue and which ones are yellow. I want to keep the colours that I can see. So just going to, I say whack on some colour, but it's really what I'm just going to do is put on blue. And I'm doing it wet on dry. Wet on dry means my brush is wet. It's going onto the dry paper. You can use all your watercolour techniques with these paints. Great thing is that they dry permanent, so I can keep washing over. Especially someone like me that keeps thinking about, keeps fiddling a little bit. Right, blue done. I keep forgetting these bits. And the reason I'm keeping it light is because I do want to show some tonal values. But the front of these won't be very light because the light's coming from here. I just want to show the colour, so it's quite nice just to put on blue. Forgot that's, when I painted it before, I forgot that had a white door. That's something I've got to try and remember. And you can see even just putting the colour on, it just starts to pull it together already. I'm not having to think about the light because there isn't the light on the front of these. These sides are the bits that are going to have the darkness, red. And I've got to remember which red do I want? That red I'll do. To keep a white door on this one. So when you've got a more complicated painting, I always find it is better to get some colour on, plot out where things are going to go. You can always work on your detail. You can always go back in. So the red bit goes up here into the eaves, because this one is slightly different to the others. It has a kind of, I don't know what you call that bit, a porch, I suppose. Now blue. Blue. I keep the same blue. I can always alter it slightly. So the blue, that's the side of the door, side of the beach huts. Now I do actually have some facts about beach huts. When I looked into it, I didn't know how much information I was going to get about beach huts, and there is a surprising amount of facts. So, beach huts have been around a while. They'll probably started out as fishermen's huts or smugglers' huts. But it was about the 1700s when doctors started to suggest cold water bathing for their health, people's health, and so the seaside became really popular. And that's where beach huts in a bathing form started. The Victorians made them very popular, especially Queen Victoria, because I've been to Osborne House and I've seen the one she used while she was there. But they became popular at seaside resorts where you could, for modesty and going into the sea, they were wheeled in, and they had men's and ladies' different beach bathing. I think towards the end of that century, mixed bathing became a little bit more popular. And beach huts lost their wheels and became more stationary. So, like I say, very popular. Right, yellow. Trying to think of which one's next. Blue, blue, red, yellow. That's a nice bright yellow. Not thinking about tonal values quite yet. Yellow, blue. Just plotting. So that's got a side. Blue, red. If I don't do this, I will completely lose which one goes where. That's due to lack of observation, to be honest. But when you've got a short time, I just want to make sure I get as much done as I can. So I'm forgetting to put these bits on here. That yellow trim on there. Not making it complicated, keeping it simple, and I think that's starting to come together even now. It hasn't got tonal values on or a great amount of detail yet, but it's quite simple, but quite effective. And I suppose a lot of that's due to that detail of the drawing. Now, I know with drawing, I've done mine quite strong for a couple of reasons. One, so you can see it, and two, so I don't lose the drawing underneath, especially when I'm having to do things quite quickly. I don't want to suddenly panic and realise I don't know where I'm going. So I often do the pencil lines quite strong, just so I know that I'm not going to lose where I'm going. And then with a watercolour, a number of people often ask, how do you get rid of the lines? Now, for me, I think the lines are part of the painting. They're just part of the whole build-up and the whole process. So I like the lines. But what you do is you do the lines much more loosely, a lot lighter. I can easily take those back by using a putty rubber. You can use a very light water-soluble graphite. You just have to be careful when you've got nice fresh colours that the graphite doesn't mingle in with the colours. But like I say, I like them. I always find them as part of the process. So let me go on to a grey. Now, another reason I've got this swatch is I can't see what colours are which. I've done them in order on my colour card, and I've got that next to me so I can see. But blacks and browns look very much the same, so I think this is black. But so I'm not surprised. I'm using a swatch card. Plus, I can also see what strength of colour I want, because this is quite a light grey, so I don't want it too strong. These colours, like with anything, you practice, you learn the colour. You learn how strong the colour is, how it works. Very strong on there, but nice watercolour, it's just moving. Use it, I don't think I mentioned using Bockingford. I'm using a heavyweight Bockingford. I don't think I needed to with this kind of painting, but it's always useful, especially when you're doing a live demo, that you know it's going to work, but probably could have got away with a 300. Right, this is where the light's hitting, so it's grey, but it's a light grey. You can see I don't even always stay in the lines, which I think upsets some people, but it's part of the painting process. Able to lift off exactly the same as you would do a watercolour. It's only when they're dry that they're very much different. And I think I've noticed that because they are different, that when they do dry, they don't drop their colour like a watercolour will. So a watercolour can be dried to about 30 to 50% its original colour you've put on. I don't think these do. They still keep their strong colour. And that's just that different formula. So that one's slightly darker. Again, just water now. Catch the top of that. Top of there. So if I am trying to catch the light at the top of the huts, I'm going to put the colour on at the bottom and move it up. Because then you're starting with your colour and you're gradiating up. Okay. So the colour's done. Missing that's white. Okay, so let's go back. I did have a nice colour for shadow, and this is why I've got the blocks out. Let me put the blocks here. So I could use the colours I've got, but blocks are a nice solid amount of Inktense. So you can use them like you would do a crayon. You can lift off, you can grate. There's loads of ways you can use. And I've got a full set of 72. I can't get it all on this space. So that's a Payne's grey, I would think. So you can see there, it's really difficult to see what the colour is, which is why I'm just testing. I will use these in a different ways. The one way I'm using now is I'm just using it as I would do a pan and picking up the colour that way. Nice. This is where I'm going to take my time and make sure I get that nice straight line. I'm not usually precise, but sometimes when you've got a beach hut that has straight lines, I don't like it to be too wonky, especially along a nice vertical. Right. So not overly strong yet. I'm actually being quite subtle because it's easier to build up values than it is to take away. Yes. The colour's at the tip of my brush, which means I can get a nice line and move it across. Okay. I could use a ruler. There's no reason why you can't. I just do have quite a steady hand, so I'm able to do it without worrying about lines. Let's do this one. So this is still plotting, this is still deciding and creating that form, that shape. I'm looking at shapes. I'm looking at these darker shapes which help show that it's the side of these huts. So it's got to be darker here. They've got kind of a, don't know if it's a windbreak. I'm going to do the shadow because I want a couple of layers on this. Now this is where I want to keep nice and sharp. Now I tried different ways. I tried it wet in wet to start with, but I quite like the wet and dry because I have that control. And I want a nice flat colour. Nice edge. So it's not the colour I'm going to end with for this shadow. But what it is doing is it's giving me that nice start of what I want it to look like. Right, next one. Sharp edge. Probably won't change brushes either. I'm using actually a size 6, which is quite small, but because I'm doing detail, I wanted a little bit more control. Picking up some blue from somewhere. So the 6 works. But I have got smaller brushes, just in case I need some more detail, but I'll probably find this is fine. You can get that edge just as easy with this brush. And when you use a bigger brush than you think, you don't move it around as much. You don't make lots of marks and move it. So a big sky like that with a tiny brush will just create streaks. Right, this one goes to there. If I didn't put this on, again, I would lose where each shadow was. You can make some alterations. You don't have to be a slave to your photo because no one's seeing the exact photo you're working from. They know it's a beach hut, so there are some features you want to, be careful with and make sure you don't lose, but no one saw the shadows it made, no one's seen the actual colour combination, so those kind of things you can be a bit more creative with. And I think it's nice to use a photo as a guide and then just put your own slant on what you're painting. It's quite light over there. It looks a lot stronger from my angle. Little. Right. So go back in. I'm going to have to quicken up because I've got about 10 minutes. Let me do this background then, if I've got 10 minutes.
Yeah, about 15.
15? Okay, I'm going to do some wet in wet. So wetting the paper. Now sometimes I will tint the water so I can see it because I want all the area I'm looking at to be wet. You can usually, if you tilt your head, you can usually see where it's shiny. Back in with that colour. This is where I should have a bigger brush. You can see how many strokes across the page you're making. And this is where you can make mistakes. Well, not mistakes, but you can make marks that you don't like, that you're not happy with stripes and things like that. Because it's wet in wet, it will dissipate, it will soften. Right, don't touch. Let's go into this bit. So I'm also waiting for this to dry as well. Normally, I would wait for that to dry before I moved on to this bit because I want it to be much cleaner. but I don't have that luxury. So what I'm going to do is be careful, to be honest. So I've wet in wet, but I haven't gone to the edge of the hill. What that means is I can control any bleed into each colour. Yellow ochre. This is the fast bit. You just put on colour and let it move around. Bit of a green. Being careful to just go up to the beach hut so I don't have halos around. Bit of the green. And this is where I'm going to use the blocks. Okay. And let's do some. So this is the block into wet. Strong. And this is where I can control, because I'm not doing the wet paint into the sky. You can move, soften, strengthen. The great thing is that you've got the colour on the paper already. Quite green up there, so I'll pick some pigment off. Don't need to just darken here because it doesn't make sense. Okay, to see what happens. That's the great thing about this, you can just leave it. Right, let's start to whack on some shadow. And a bit of detail. So I could have gone on straight away with this darkness, but I didn't know how the other colours would work. Where is... There's one of these blues is quite strong. That's the navy, I think. And there's a purple. One of these colours is purple. Which one? That one. Yeah. So you can see why I've got that colour chart, because you really can't see. So I'm mixing, using the block and the purple to get the darker colour. I want to strengthen this. And the reason I'm putting that bit of purple in, I want it to be a slightly different shadow than on the side of the huts. Okay, that's done. Purple and this blue. So block and pan. Haven't used the pencil yet, but I could do that. It's taped down, so I'm having to move myself rather than, oops, the painting. Like I say, because I know this is a heavyweight watercolour paper, it's going to work without me worrying about it cockling. And you find that you do have to position yourself for different marks, depending on what you're doing. So this needs to be dark.
About 10 minutes then, Anita.
Okay, thank you.
No rush.
No, it's fine. Lots of brush. Right. Mixing same colour into a pan because it just loads my brush. Let's put some more blue on. Really dark under there. That's great. The door. This is why I like the pencil marks underneath, because they still show through. There's not a huge amount of tonal value in these fronts because of the light being from the back, which is quite nice actually. It's a little less work. But I'm just going to paint in the direction of the slats on the front, just because it will, hopefully I'll leave some areas of white and it just adds a little bit more interest and detail. If I had more time I could really, but I have said in the past, actually giving yourself a little less time is a challenge, but what it does, it takes away a lot of the, every mark has to work straight away rather than fluffing around or knowing you can come back. So I have about 5 minutes to be able to build up as much colour as I can. We'll need some darker under here. But it's not getting a lot of shadow. See if I can do the same quickly with this one. Just do the doors in one nice streak. You've got that done really quickly. Taking some of that blue into the shadow because the hut is blue throughout. It's the same blue. It's just the shadow that's adding a little interest by not doing it totally flat colour. Red. This is a great shadow red, that's why I picked it out. just works really nicely on that edge. And there as well. Sometimes it can be just something as simple as one wash over with your brush. Brown. I just forgot this bit here. So that is underneath, and it has little struts across, but I don't want it to be flat, so I need to add a little bit of shadow. And white doors aren't white, so I'm going to just add shadow. It's actually got a blue bar on its door. Not strong enough. Dark under here. Forgot the darkness under there. Some shadow. In reality, Gary, how many minutes can I have?
Well, it depends whether these people want to get home or not.
Just really do need a couple minutes.
You got a couple more minutes,
Right. Let's do this while that's dry, because I can use the pencil to do detail. So it's dry. Unlike a watercolour, that if I did all that drop and wet into it, you get cauliflowers or you can get blooms, which are nice techniques to use, but it's not always what you want. So I can easily just taking some of the colour into the shadow, because the shadow is on top of it, it's part of it. You've got to remember that it's not a separate piece. The slight bit of colour I'm picking up is because it's probably not quite dry yet. Let the paint do the work. So if I do this, it will end up granulating and graining without me having to do too much. Right, I'm going to do some final detail, and this I'll do this as quick as I can. Red, blue. So these are the Inktense pencil. You can use them as you would do a pencil, but you can also add water to them, and they will bring out the lovely Inktense colour that you get. See there, it's just kicking into a bit of a wet area, and I'm going to use that because this should still be wet under the beach huts where it's got really dark shadow. See the colour pinging out into the wet surface. So, blue. Just adding a bit more texture. Oops. Red. So adding the texture, it just adds a little bit more interest. Same on here. What do they call this kind of covering? Forgot. I've got it on my shed roof. But it's kind of gritty. So the texture of the watercolour paper I've used, you can get that gritty texture by just using the pencil. Blue. See if I can bring out a little bit of detail on these ones, because I haven't got a lot of colour on them. Like I say, Inktense are absolutely brilliant for layering. Nearly done. Just want to make sure I add shadow. I'm going to have to leave it there. So just to recap, using the Inktense products, the pans, which new set of colours have just come out, the blocks adds that lovely detail, the pencils, using them as a final detail and for a little bit of texture, and all dry permanent. Once they're dry, they're permanent. Great on fabric, great on different surfaces. And when I did this, I was able to wash over without worrying about disturbing the colour underneath. So, as with anything, like I say, I could have carried on. The reveal, I don't always remember to do this, so actually you're looking. Slowly taking off the tape. Do notice it does sometimes tear the paper, but that's just either I've got it too sticky and I haven't taken off some of the tack, or I'm rushing, which is more than likely. But any painting looks much better with a nice clean edge or a frame around it. Cooking up. I'm going to have to drop things because they're in my way. I know you haven't given me a lot of space on my table, so I'm just...
Oh, that's the biggest table in the
I just don't have room. Right. Okay.
I'm going to the wine shop now so people at home can see just how much space you've got on your table.
And it's not enough. I just have to deal with these circumstances.
Can't work under these conditions.
I know, I just can't. No. But there's a lot. I can't, to be honest. Oops, ripping. Look, I'm not concentrating. I've got short arms and I can't reach anything that's much further away. So, slowly. And the reason I'm doing it at this angle is if it does tear, it tears away. So anything that you put a mount round, you're not going to see it anyway. Bockingford paper, it's a cellulose. And I just like the way it reacts with a lot of the mediums I use. Slight bit of tearing. Ta-da! Like I say, I would like to carry on, get it a little stronger, but in the short time you've had, I think that's come together quite nicely. So I hope you enjoyed that demonstration. and join us next week for a number of live demonstrations and workshops. And that's goodbye from me and goodbye from the audience.
Bye.